I'm Thinking About Ending Things is the latest film from Netflix. And in all honesty, I think this might be the best Netflix film that's actually been made. I mean, I say that and I haven't really seen a whole lot of them, but can you blame me? But this didn't even feel like a Netflix movie. This was a really strange movie, but a really good movie, and something that I feel like should have actually had like a theatrical release. It's based on a book that came out back in 2016, I think, and it tells the story of this girl who's going to meet her boyfriend's parents. She's only been dating him for 6 weeks, but from the very start, things are a little bit off, a little bit odd. It's labeled as a psychological thriller, but it's quite subtle in the way it does things, in the way it makes things seem off, in the way it makes things seem weird. You know, it's little details, but it works better that way because you pick up on it clearly, like because you're quite enticed by the characters and the dialogue because it's very well written, the characters are very interesting. But you get these little hints, things are said, things are done, and you pick up on it. It's mostly things that are being said between these characters and their behaviour towards one another. It sort of changes, but neither character reacts to it. You sort of have the main character, played by Jessie Buckley. Her character doesn't actually have a given name. She's just labelled as young woman in this. But you feel like she's the focal point, like your main character. But when the strange things occur in the dialogue and things within the setting, but she's not necessarily picking up on it, or she's noticing it but she's not reacting to it as if something strange is going on, which is what makes this film so interesting and so like captivating. Because in a psychological thriller like this, you assume when you're with the main character and strange things start going on, they're going to start panicking, freaking out, reacting to other characters like, what's going on, why is this happening? But in this, she picks up on what's happening, but she doesn't necessarily react on it. She just sort of carries on going. The way it's sort of structured, the way it flows, it's building up anticipation, it's almost building up a bit of tension, and it's one of those films that at times for like a long segment, it'll feel like a jump scare is coming, but it never comes. And that's the best way to build intrigue, to build interest, to keep the viewer keen. Now, when I say strange things going on, I mean things like, when she gets to the house, pictures changing, the appearance of characters changing around her. Things in the dialogue as well. She'll get called different names, but no one really reacts to it. Like one moment she's Lucy, the next someone's calling her Amy, and she just sort of carries on. Like she has a moment of, is that my name? But then she just carries on. And she has all these different, so-called professions. When she's meeting her boyfriend's parents, one moment she's an artist, another she's a poet, another she's like a physicist. But like I said, it's the fact that she's not necessarily reacting to it, which is making it very intriguing as a viewer, because it's not like you're actually in the same boat as her. It's not like you're experiencing what's going on through her. You're sort of having a thing of, what is going on with her, and is she alright? Like, is she sane? That's about as much as I can really get into plot-wise without going too deep into the story, because it's one of those films, it really takes its time. It's quite a long movie for a Netflix film. It's about 2 hours 20, 2 hours 25. It takes its time. You get very long segments in particular like locations, like, the car journey there is a long segment. The car journey back is a long segment. The segment in the house with the parents, that's a long segment as well. So they take their time doing everything. But you get some really well written dialogue, and the performances from the four main cast were all just very, very good, top tier. They got a really good cast for this. I would just say watch this movie. Don't really go into expecting anything. I didn't know what to expect. You get a synopsis for it, like it's about a girl going to meet her boyfriend's parents and things are strange, but there's a lot more to it than that, and a lot more depth than I expected. Now, for those of you that have watched it, I will talk a little bit of spoilers, in a sense. I mean, from what I gathered, I also did a bit of research myself because I was a bit lost with the whole, not like the ending is confusing. The whole movie as a whole is a bit of a, what's going on, and it's not like they just drop something on you at the end that doesn't make sense, because in a way that's what I was expecting, like something to explain it all at the end, but that's not the case at all, which is quite nice. From what I gathered, the scenes where you cut to a janitor in a school, back and forth, you kind of get a hint that there's a connection between him and the character Jake, I think his name is, the boyfriend. I'm assuming, I think this is right, that the janitor is actually Jake, in the future in a sense, or like that's the present and the janitor's looking back on a time when he was Jake. And it's him sort of fantasizing, dreaming of what life would have been like if he'd asked out this girl that he'd met in a bar one night, or seen in a bar, I think it was, which is the girl, the young woman. So it's all sort of this fantasy in his head about what would have happened, you know, if he'd met this girl all this time ago, if he'd taken her to meet his parents. And that explains all the weirdness in terms of her name changing, in terms of her profession changing, because he's telling like a different story in a sense. He's creating it. You know, if he had met this girl and he'd taken her home to his parents, like, what would he have called her? You know, he's making up these names because when he saw this girl, he never went up to her, he never asked her name, all this sort of stuff. I'm probably not explaining it very well, which is a common thing on this channel, but if you've seen it, you'll know roughly what I mean by that. Which of course takes you to the question of then what's the point of this movie? You know, what does it really achieve? Because you get that with some movies, but this wasn't one of those movies where maybe it didn't have a whole lot of meaning or it didn't achieve a whole lot and then it's pissed me off or anything like that, because I think it told a very interesting story. It tells this interesting story about a man who just sort of wonders what would have happened if he'd made a different choice, but you know, because he's, I guess, a shy guy, he's just ended up living the same life, you know, as this janitor in this school, not really achieving anything. You know, this film is basically his daydream, almost. And it's somewhat sad, somewhat a little bit tragic, because you see that he genuinely feels like he could have done better, like he could have made his family proud, like he could have achieved great things, you know, like he has like a, you know, near the end you get this vision of him and he's like achieved great things as like a physicist, but in reality he's still a janitor. And I think what it is he's somewhat delusional. He's sort of dreaming things, imagining things, and he's getting lost in this like other world that he's created where his life turned out different. I think this is a really clever movie, a really good movie, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of what Netflix have done because it's sort of samey crap, but this was really surprised me. For it's a very good movie, very well written, very well acted, very well directed. I really like the style of it, the way they shot it. You know, you got like sort of panels at the sides, so it's like a square frame rather than, you know, like a wide frame. You know, it's one of those movies that'll make you think. It has some very interesting, you know, like dialogue and points made by the character that sort of have you curious, you know, thinking about life yourself. You know, it's one of those ones where it'll get you thinking and get you questioning things. This is a great film. I really enjoyed it. It's very strong from Netflix, probably the strongest they've done. I'm thinking about ending things an 8.5. Thanks for watching.